Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is in our flexibility and scalability. So I think the biggest problem for an office is they don't have full-time support that can always be available because speed matters.
What I found is that if you don't get back to somebody within about 2 minutes, sometimes it can be as long as 3, sometimes it's shorter than 2, you lose them forever. They've gone on, they've called your competitor.
What is standard for, if I get 100 people who are trying to find out about Full Arch, how many of those people are going to end up signing up to come to the office, and then how many end up showing up? And kind of break that down for me, and just preferably from marketing.
So I'd say, they're all going to be a little different depending on what the actual product's going to be or what the end goal is. But the biggest piece of incremental gain that we see is, being able to handle that inbound inquiry is the most important.
Welcome back to the special edition of the Full Arch Advantage podcast. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the founder of SMC National, where we help you create, convert, and close more full arch cases so you can grow the way that you want. And today, this special series is really going to help you grow because we have a special guest who is going to be working with us with several of our other guests, and her name is Margaret. Margaret is the founder and chief advisor of i3 Ignite and is an implant marketing and operational genius. She actually was the former ClearChoice COO for many, many years, and she helped them scale from the ground up. So this is going to be a set of shows that are really going to help you and your practices grow around Full Arch. In today's episode, Margaret and I are going to be interviewing Craig Taylor, who's the CEO of InfoCision, and we're going to be talking about how to increase case acceptance. All right, Craig, I am really excited to have this conversation because you do something in the dental industry that's really hard to do. So would you mind just teeing us up really quickly, give us a brief overview of who you guys are and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. So as a call center provider, we're really trying to be a marketing partner to convert the most scheduled appointments we can for the offices. And so we're really focused on kind of making that first inquiry all about the best experience possible and really using our data and analytics to try and separate what the different customer bases are going to be so that we have the most propensity to actually close to a scheduled appointment and making sure we're sharing that data with people. So it's really all about making sure we, provide the highest quality, best experience for a customer coming in. And then also for the organization, trying to separate who the most likely person to actually close an appointment for you is going to be.
That's so cool. Yeah, this is something that is so important. And what a lot of people don't realize, and we've learned this the hard way, when we started doing Full Arch marketing for our clients and for our offices, we realized right away that most of these offices, if they're a GP office, they just don't have the manpower to be able to respond to people. They just don't. And what I mean by that is we have found for every $5,000 of marketing budget that you spend on Full Arch, you need about an hour or two a day of lead nurturing, meaning answering the phone, answering questions, and they're big questions, right? Like they're not just like, oh, do you have an availability? It's like, how much does this cost? How does this work? How long does it take? And it's really, really hard. So historically, and Margaret and I have talked about this before, call centers have really struggled to implement this into their workflow. So what have you guys done to really solve that problem of answering these tough questions for these offices?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is in our flexibility and scalability. So I think the biggest problem for an office is they don't have full-time support that can always be available because speed matters. In these cases, lots of people are shopping around, looking different places, and we really try and what we do is speed to lead technology to make sure as soon as we're getting an inquiry, if they're not calling into us, we're following up, within 30 seconds to a phone call. If they're not answering the phone, we're following up with a text message and really having that omni-channel strategy. And so, whether that's off hours, so, outside the hours of a traditional dental office, we're providing support at all hours to make sure that we're really there on demand because it's all about reaching the customer with the right message at the right time through the right medium. And so, as a call center expert, that's something we really have the flexibility to provide. So, we have a different available resources at different times that, a traditional office oftentimes can't handle because, volume isn't steady and stagnant throughout the day. You're going to have peaks and valleys and seasonality. And so what we really try and do is understand those trends and flows to make sure that we have the right amount of people available so that, at any instant, we're ready to be there, trained, ready to answer the calls and handle a good experience for them.
Craig, one of the things you said is so important because if at least at ClearChoice and with other clients, what I found is that if you don't get back to somebody within about 2 minutes, sometimes it can be as long as 3, sometimes it's shorter than 2, you lose them forever. They've gone on, they've called your competitor. And so you can't expect to, let me just say this a different way. It is very tough to staff an internal contact center for your practice that can be staffed well enough to take the peaks and valleys of folks who are calling in, because it's very difficult to be able to say, we're going to staff for being able to respond to every call, and if we aren't picking up every call, then we're going to call them back within 2 minutes. That's tough. That is a tough scheduling challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, we truly like to differentiate ourselves, because we can have more people available. And also, you're not paying for that dedicated time of our people waiting for just those calls. So because we have more clients and more industries, we can kind of have people on the ready as they're needed on the volume, which is something, as a traditional provider, you don't have that flexibility.
It's
so
tough.
It really fits well into an outsourced model.
Exactly. So why should a practice think about outsourcing? And how should they think about that? Should they outsource? Should they not? Why should they? Why shouldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, the simplest answer is there's an ROI every time. You can measure the cost of what it is to do it internally versus the cost of outsourcing. And, we do everything on a performance base. So we're trying to measure every statistic and really show our worth and value from everything from customer satisfaction, the survey, the results, our close rates. So we can really prove our value. And the other is just, this is our core competency. What we see often is that, people are trying to piecemeal together, this piece of the business, which is not their core competency. And so we try and say, it can be a pain in the butt to manage lots of people and lots of different marketing plans, and it's not people's core competency. We want to be that true marketing partners that's giving recommendations and taking the headache away from you to know you have a good partner who really understands at the end of the day, you're trying to get good, solid consults so you can focus on your core competency and finding an outsourcer to provide that partnership with.
So how long have you all been doing this, Craig? Well, let me rephrase that. Okay, so I started working with InfoCision a million years ago before I even left ClearChoice. And I will also say I can't say enough fabulous things about you all and how data-driven you are and how excellent you are. In fact, so excellent to the point that I think in probably the last year, your close rate is equal to what the internal ClearChoice close rate is. So you guys are rock stars at this. I just want to give you that quick plug. But what types of questions should people be asking on the phone? Like if I work for a dentist's office, right, and I'm talking to somebody who just called in and has questions about full arch. Like how do you think about preparing your team to answer those questions in a way that enables the appointments to be made with the people who appointments really should be made with?
Sure. Yeah. So to start with your first question, this is year 41 for us. So older than me. My parents actually founded the company 41 years ago out of their home with 3 people on the phones. And now we have a couple thousand doing calls here domestically, Puerto Rico, Mexico, and the Philippines. So we try and offer a few different price points to suit the needs, but definitely a lot of different options. And yeah, the beautiful thing about, an outsourcer is we like to test everything. So, we can do lots of different question asks to see what actually drives the appointments on one end. So, as we're starting with the current list of questions, we can start as simple as what you're doing today. And then we can decide, so which one of these are actually driving the true conversion at the end of the day? So, some of that might be on timing, how quickly we can get them to that actual scheduled consultation. Others could be, about the specific needs of the procedure. And so we can really kind of pinpoint for every different sector, what's going to be most important. And then we can measure that to see, exactly what is driving it and what's not. And, each hour and each day, we're able to, report on that data and ultimately then change up those questions and really learn as we go to drive the process of incremental improvement.
You guys are really good at that, I have to say.
So a quick question for you. So this is amazing and is a great tool that people are going to be able to use like instantly out of the box, which is really, really cool. What are some, like, break down the conversion rate, and then also inside of that, when a lead comes in, so let's say an office is getting 100 leads, it sounds like you're taking not only the phone calls, but also the form fills and all those other kind of leads that are coming in, and then break down like, what is standard for, if I get 100 people who are trying to find out about Full Arch, how many of those people are going to end up signing up to come to the office, and then how many end up showing up, and kind of break that down for me, and it's preferably from marketing. Obviously doctor referrals and stuff like that is easy, but like from a marketing perspective, what that funnel looks like.
Sure. Yeah. So I'd say, they're all going to be a little different depending on what the actual product's going to be or what the end goal is. But the biggest piece of incremental gain that we see is, when you're handling, it's kind of as Margaret and I were talking at the beginning, being able to handle that inbound inquiry is the most important. Because if somebody is available, they're on the phone, they're ready to talk to you, being able to handle that one right away is going to be your most productive lead. And so making sure
trained, and they have to be trained. They have to be able to answer all the questions that you get asked around Full Arch. Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, it's a great point because, it's all about a one-call close too. Like, we don't want to get into a habit where, let me refer you to the website, let me follow up with you and answer. It's so difficult in this day and age to get a hold of that person. It's really important to make sure they're trained and ready to answer all those questions and handle it in one close, which is really what we focus on. And then the big difference we've seen in the last couple of years is really kind of from that web form piece. Our ability to take a web form and know as soon as somebody clicks a button on that web form to initiate that outbound dial, which again, we do on a 30-second service level and at a maximum of 2 minutes, the propensity of that person that you're reaching in 30 seconds is 2 to 3 times what it's going to be if you're following that up, next day. And so it's really about making sure that you have that speed to have that conversation right away while somebody's interested and while they're there, in which the reality is, most offices don't have that real-time data feed to understand that, but that's something that we can really offer, is be there, on the ready to handle this when people are, wanting to have these conversations in order to get to that one interaction close.
That flexibility in capacity is critical, because unless it's just really important to be able to have that flexibility and capacity. And it's tough to do if you've got 3, maybe two locations, right? That's hard to get.
Yeah, it definitely is. So I know you guys track everything. You're super data driven. So what, like, if you're getting 100 calls, how many of those calls could the office say, 50% convert, 20% convert? And then do you guys track if they show up? Like, walk me through your guys' funnel from a percentage standpoint. Yeah,
sure. So I'd say, probably a 50% is a good average starting point. And then it's, again, depending on the product or the service. And then of those, about 80% are coming to actually show up for those appointments. And then we also like to integrate, trying to drive that number too, because, we can send reminders to the appointments. We can send follow-ups if somebody has missed an appointment through text message and email and or phone calls. And so we really kind of do a lot of things to try and drive those fallout pieces too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I'd say those are probably the two main
really
targets
good.
there.
Go ahead, Margaret.
So learnings from kind of my experience as well, the show rate when you have a really strong contact center goes from, call it, especially on digital, goes from maybe 60% up to 80%. It's huge what they can do, what can be done when you really understand what you need to say and how you need to say it in order to get those people to show for their appointments, because digital show rates are terrible these days.
And I would also say, that has a lot to do with the qualification of the leads too. Yeah. So we're trying to be as detailed as possible and making sure that, we have every box checked before we're really sending that on as a qualified lead. So obviously, as you if you would broaden that box, that show rate's going to go down. But really, our most success is try to be as rigorous as possible up front so that, by the time they're a qualified lead, the likelihood of them actually coming through is very solid.
So who should, as you think about different practices, who should think about outsourcing this contact center function, Craig?
Well, my answer...
Is it any practice? Is it... Do they need to be doing like $500K a month in revenue? Like, how do you think about that?
Hey, sorry to interrupt the show, but I got something that's going to bring a lot of value to you. This segment is called Ask Gary, and this is where we answer your questions live on the podcast. So if you have a question about marketing, email it in to askgary@smcnational.com or leave a comment or DM us on social media and we'll get these questions answered. Today's question comes from Jackie, and Jackie wants to know, what can we do to boost our marketing in Q4 and especially at the end of the year? The end of the year is really hard in dental because you basically lose about 2.5 weeks with Thanksgiving and Christmas, and people just aren't thinking about going to the dentist. It's not something that people want to do. And so there's a couple things that you can do. Number one, and probably the biggest, is you can do an end of year use it or lose it benefit. And that works really well. You want to email, you want to text that out, you want to get that back in front of your patient base. And a lot of people are going to come in and just want to use their benefits. So that's huge. The other thing that you can do is you can do an Invisalign push or a clear liner push. At the end of the year, you really want to push this towards Christmas. Hey, do your kids want to get straight teeth, or does your wife or your girlfriend want to get straight teeth? And you can help them gift that up as a gift card, and you can do a big push at the end of the year. That's really big. And the other thing you can do is you can get outstanding treatment. So you can go into your PMS, pull any treatment that is over a couple $1,000s that hasn't been accepted yet, and then you can actually market to those patients, call them, email them, text them, and let them know that you're doing a training session at the end of the year and that you are going to give them 25% off any open treatment that they have and over a certain dollar amount. And you can get a lot of people coming in at the end of the year, and that will help keep your numbers up.
Yeah, you would say, in your mind, it seems like the bigger, the better. And the reality is it's almost a better fit for the smaller, the better, because, you just don't have that flexibility. And so, the nice thing about this industry is that the work is so similar that we've kind of been able to build a team at InfoCision that can put a lot of these similar type programs together into this mix. So, if a customer, we call them communicators or agents on the phone, they might be trained on ClearChoice, Frontline, Aspen Dental, and, an additional offices. And so we can actually take some of those smaller offices and lump them into a bigger program that are just getting a different script, different questions, different specifications. But that way we're able to kind of pull these smaller offices into a bigger program. And so certainly, anybody that, is not, again, I'll just keep emphasizing speed, doesn't have the ability to get, the speed to handle those calls or interactions or leads when they're first coming in. And, we have the ability to kind of conglomerate those up a little bit to provide some flexibility there. But certainly it's an option for almost any size office.
And what I love from one of the things I love from a marketing standpoint about what you all do, Gary, is like every single lead that's generated by marketing, or not every single, but call it 97% of them actually get to talk to somebody who's extremely knowledgeable and well-trained. And it's not a follow-up call. It's they contact, whether it's a forum or a phone or whatever, and they get their questions answered and an appointment scheduled like right then. So you're not wasting any of your marketing dollars. And right now, that's a huge issue.
Yeah, that's definitely a big issue. Craig, what else are you telling people? Like I heard you say that you send like text messages and emails and follow-ups. That's a lot of the lead nurturing process, which frankly, very few offices have time for. Most offices don't have time to even answer the phone, let alone to do that lead nurturing part. How much are you digging into that? And like, what exactly are you guys doing there to like help these offices? Because I think that's huge.
Yeah, I think it's really a key differentiator because that cadence kind of all has to go in concert. So for example, if we're getting that online lead and calling it immediately, we have to know that, okay, they didn't pick up, so now you're getting a text message immediately. Now, depending on what happens through that SMS interaction has to then also go back to our dialer and say, this, the call was dispositioned, it was ended, or was set a call for a new time. And so it's really making sure that exactly what happened in the SMS, what happened in the call, and really just letting that cadence play out. And, that's not something that you can really build on your own and manually track and, have a cadence of, all of your customers or opportunities that way. But that's something, we can kind of build out of the box that you can just, get as a turnkey solution. And so we can really, determine, some people like to just call immediately. I'm more a believer of the call than text immediately, because through that text, you can either set up the new call, you can leave an inbound phone number, and have the email follow-ups. And so really about making sure that omni-channel is a fully integrated campaign is something that, most offices, frankly, don't have the time or ability to follow up on these leads with. That is just kind of an out-of-the-box solution that we provide.
Awesome. If someone wants to reach out to you guys and learn more about what you're doing, how do they get in touch with you?
Sure. So the easiest way is going to be on our website, InfoCision.com. We have some web forms ourselves, so try and practice what we preach. You can enter all of your information in there. And then certainly I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, Craig Taylor, or craig.taylor@InfoCision.com. I'd be glad to handle any emails and set up a call and have a conversation with anybody and everybody.
These folks are world class. And I will say that at ClearChoice, they've been working with ClearChoice for 20 years. And ClearChoice does not suffer fools gladly. And they keep demonstrating their ability to generate significant ROI. So, I would say think seriously about outsourcing. And if you do, then think seriously about InfoCision, because they're terrific.